The Lord mesmerized the barber. The Lord made the barber like his puppet to act according to his will. And the barber cut the first hair. When that hair fell to the ground in the bank of the Ganga area, when that hair fell, millions of tears fell along with it from all the devotees and all the residents of Katwa. For every hair that fell to the ground, there were millions of tears falling to the ground. Nityananda, Mukunda, Chandrasekhar, it was unbearable for them. They couldn't watch. They put their cloths over their eyes and fell unconscious on the ground. And they came to consciousness and looked up and saw the hair falling, and all they could do was wail in tears. People were collapsing, people were crying, but it was too late. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the only person that was happy. Everyone was suffering unbearably. And Lord Chaitanya was smiling in bliss. He was in so much bliss he couldn't control himself. In the middle of the haircut, he told the barber, wait a moment, and jumped up into the air and danced and said to Mukunda, chant, chant, chant. And everyone's watching this scene. It was heart-rending. The devotees are laying on the ground, everybody's crying, unable to even breathe, and Lord Chaitanya is dancing among them in ecstasy in the middle of his haircut. Part of his head was shaved, part of it was full hairs. He couldn't control his bliss. It was like such happiness that his heart just exploded. Just like sometimes you're something that rushes you with so much happiness, you just laugh, you can't control it. That happiness just has to come out somehow or other. It has to be released. So it may be released as a smile, or it may be released as tears, or it may be released as laughter. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his ecstasy, it had to be released. So he jumped in the air, raised his arms, and loudly cried out the holy names. Dancing and dancing and dancing. Then he somehow came to external consciousness, sat in front of the barber and said, continue. How was the barber able to cut Lord Chaitanya's beautiful hair? That hair that totally enchanted the gopis of Vrindavan. To see that beautiful hair, the gopis were willing to renounce everything of the world and meet Krishna. Even Brahma, Shiva, Sukadeva Goswami are crying for the darshan of the beautiful hair of the Supreme Lord. And this barber was cutting it off. But the Lord was controlling him by his love. And as all four directions were filled with the howling, the shrieking, and the crying of seeing his hairs falling to the ground, eventually it was done. And the barber looked at the Lord and said, I will never ever cut another hair. Because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's hair is the supreme essence of all sweetness. Beautiful hair. Black like the crow's feathers. Like the finest silk. It would curl around his magnificently sweet moon-like face and cascade down his broad golden shoulders, tied in a little knot on the top and decorated with flowers. There was nothing more beautiful in all of creation than the Lord's hair. And now it was gone. That barber, his hands became so infused with sweetness that for the rest of his life, his occupation was making sweets. And those sweets were very intoxicating. The Lord then went from the ashram of Keshav Bharati to the Ganga to take his bath, and everyone followed him. He took his holy, sacred, ceremonial bath in the Ganga, dried him, came off in his soaking wet clothes without drying himself, and sat before Keshav Bharati in the ashram. And the Lord prayed, please give me service to Krishna. Keshav Bharati said to him, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are independent, supreme controller of everything. And you as the Jagat Guru come to teach the world. If it is your wish for me to be your guru, as your servant, I will be your guru and initiate you. Prior to the haircutting, when Keshav Bharati was trying to convince Lord Chaitanya not to do it, he said, I cannot perform this deed unless you get the permission from your mother and your wife. And Nimai immediately said, all right, I will go. I will get permission. And he started running. Now, according to some of our acharyas, they claim, it's in some of our scriptures, that Keshav Bharati Maharaj said this because he was planning, while the Lord was going to Navadvip to get permission, he was going to go away and not be here when he gets back. Because he really didn't want to do this. But then he was thinking, as the Lord was running away, how could I? He's the Supreme Lord. I understand who he really is. How could I be duplicitous with him? And besides that, how possibly could anyone resist him? He'll definitely get permission from anyone. He already did. He'll do it again. Come back, Nimai, come back. So now Nimai is standing before him, soaking wet from the bath in the Ganga with the shaved head. And Keshav Bharati says, you are the Supreme Lord. And if this is how you want to teach the world, to make me your guru, I am your servant. And then he gave the 2 pieces of saffron cloth to our beloved Lord Gauranga. The Lord put on the saffron dress of a sannyasi. When the people saw him, without his beautiful golden robes, without his jewelry and his garlands, without his luxurious cascading hair, their hearts were broken. But still, in the saffron robes of a sannyasi, he was so unlimitedly beautiful. He charmed their hearts. They fell unconditionally in this form of Mahaprabhu as a sannyasi. Then the Lord did something that was wonderful. He said, Gurudev, I want to tell you something privately. And he whispered in his guru's ear. He said, I had a dream. Now this is a secret. Can you all hear? He said, I had a dream. An effulgent being appeared to me and spoke this sannyas mantra into my ear. I want you to hear it and tell me if you think it's good. And then he spoke a brand new sannyas mantra into the ear of Keshava Bharati Maharaj. That mantra, through his ears, went right to the heart of Keshava Bharati and just conquered his life. He smiled and he said, that's a wonderful mantra. That's the best of all great mantras. The Lord initiated his guru. And then after he was duly initiated, his guru initiated him. He said, I have not heard such a mantra like this. And then Keshav Bharati Maharaj whispered in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ear the same mantra he was just initiated in by his disciple seconds before. And that mantra entered deep into the heart of Lord Gauranga. Keshav Bharati Maharaj gave Chaitanya Mahaprabhu his danda and his kamandalu, his sannyas begging bowl. And then he was thinking, what name can I give Gauranga Mahaprabhu? The standard is that I should give him the name Bharati, because he's a disciple of Bharati in my sampradaya. But how could I name him after me? He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's beyond all sampradayas. What name could possibly be given to the most merciful, compassionate Lord of the universe when he takes sannyas? He was contemplating in this way. And he prayed. He prayed to the Lord to give him the name that would be perfect. At that moment, the goddess Saraswati appeared on Keshav Bharati Maharaj's tongue and spoke the name that the Lord was meant to be given. He said, because you are spreading love of Krishna, Krishna consciousness to everyone you meet, because you have advented in this world to spread Krishna consciousness, love of God all over the world, therefore your name will be Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya was very happy with this name. And when he proclaimed this name, everyone in Katwa was so blissful to hear the revelation of the Lord's new name that they all cried out very loudly, Hariva! 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 Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu-3 Jai. Much louder than that. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu-3. People were intoxicated just hearing that name. At that moment, it was revealed to the world. One of Sri Lord Chaitanya's previous classmates, he was the father of Srinivasacharya. I believe his name was Gangadhar Bhattacharya, something like that. He was going to see his father-in-law, and he was traveling toward Jajigram, and he happened to come through Katwa. And he heard everyone was talking about it. That Nimai Pandit is taking sannyas today, right now. Nimai Pandit, my friend, he's taking sannyas. What? How? He had such mixed feelings. He didn't know what to think. He ran to the place, and he arrived just at the moment when Keshav Bharati Maharaj said, "Your name will be Sri Krishna Chaitanya." And from that point, everyone in all of Katwa, Kantakanagar, were saying, "Chaitanya, Chaitanya, Chaitanya." And this man was saying, "Chaitanya, Chaitanya, Chaitanya." And he went back to his village. And people say, "Where were you?" "Chaitanya." What's wrong with you? "Chaitanya." "Would you like prasad?" "Chaitanya." Do you even know who I am?" "Chaitanya." That name and that occasion, Mahaprabhu taking sannyas, getting that name, all he could do for weeks is just say Chaitanya, Chaitanya, Chaitanya 24 hours a day. That is how this event affected people's hearts. Now, our beloved Lord was officially, formally a sannyasi. And the Lord was so happy that after getting the name and the dand and the kamandalu and the saffron dress and receiving the mantra, he said to Mukunda, actually, before I get into that, the Lord ordered Chandrasekhar Acharya to bring all the ingredients and to perform the entire ceremony, all the rituals. This is something we'll never be able to comprehend. Chandrasekhar Acharya was the brother-in-law of Sachi Devi. He was married to Sachi Mata's younger sister. After Jagannath Mishra passed away to Vaikuntha, the only male left in the entire family was Chandrasekhar Acharya. More than anyone else, he helped Sachi to be like Lord Chaitanya's own father. Chandrasekhar, also known as Acharya Ratna, he loved Lord Chaitanya like a father loves a son. He was his uncle. In traditional Bengali families, the uncle and the father are practically the same. In his heart, Acharya Ratna simply wanted to bring Lord Chaitanya home to be with his beloved sister-in-law Sachi Devi, his mother. But Lord Chaitanya ordered him, "You perform the rituals." Such an emotional, spiritual experience that was. A person who had Vatsalya Ras, a person who was his own wife and her sister were so absolutely dear to him. He was performing the ceremony that would disconnect him from Sachimata and Navadvip forever. Not long before, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was having Nam Kirtan in the house of Acharya Ratna. Sometimes at Srivasangam, sometimes at Chandrasekhar Bhavan. It was there in his house that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu danced in the mood of the goddess of fortune all night long. And the devotees enjoyed watching the Lord dance so much, he said, I will dance until the sun rises, in the mood of Radharani, Rukmini, and the goddess of fortune. They were so enthralled. He danced with such emotion, like Radharani, that Sachimata asked Srivas, who is that dancing? And he said, that's your son. And she fainted. They were chanting as he was dancing, and they knew it had to end when the sun rose. Vrindavan Das Thakur explained, when the sun rose that morning, the devotees were so upset that his dance would stop, that all the devotees glanced at the sun in such a way that it appeared by their glance they were going to burn the sun to ashes. That was their feelings. It was from his house that these beautiful leelas. And now he's leaving Navadvip forever. He won't come to my house anymore. His uncle, his aunt, my wife, his mother. What will happen to our family? He's all we have. He's everything. But out of his love of everyone, Lord Chaitanya chose him to perform the rituals of sannyas. And it was done. When everything was concluded, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so filled with happiness. Chant the holy names, Mukunda. Mukunda began to chant. Lord Chaitanya was loudly crying out the holy names. And he was dancing so ecstatically that without even knowing it, he threw his danda in one direction and he threw his kamandalu in another direction. And people were watching. And Keshav Bharati Maharaj was a very sober, elderly sannyasi. And he was a sannyasi in the Shankar Sampradaya. Because in those days, the Shankar Sampradaya was very highly respected. The Vaishnav Sampradaya was not so known to people then. Keshav Bharati Maharaj was a very, very great Vaishnav, but he chose, by the Lord's own will, to take sannyas in the Shankar Ekadanda Sampradaya to serve the Lord's purpose, so that the Lord would get more respect and more doors would open for his mercy to flow in. Now, sannyasis traditionally in the Shankar Sampradaya do not show emotions. So as the Lord was dancing, Keshav Bharati Maharaj was very patiently and soberly watching. Then Lord Gauranga, he approached Keshav Bharati, and in the middle of the kirtan, he embraced him, ecstatically embracing his guru. 24-year-old new sannyasi is embracing in the middle of the kirtan a very elderly senior sannyasi guru. And what happened? when he embraced Keshav Bharati Maharaj, with that embrace, he filled his guru with his own love. And suddenly, to everyone's absolute amazement, Keshav Bharati Maharaj raised his arms, roared in ecstasy, and began to dance. And within moments, without even knowing it, he threw his danda and his kamandalu in the forest. And the guru and the disciple, Mahaprabhu and Keshav Bharati Maharaj, were dancing and dancing and dancing together. Keshav Bharati Maharaj's eyes were flooding with tears. His hairs were standing on. His limbs were trembling. Lord Chaitanya was, all of the ecstatic bodily symptoms of love of God were just erupting all over. And the people of Katwa were watching these two sannyasis dancing together. And everyone forgot all their anxieties. They forgot who they were. All they knew was the guru and disciple are dancing in ecstasy. It was like a tidal wave coming from them.